So welcome to Stand Tall. This is our July masterclass inside the Living on Lemonade group. I'm excited to talk about people pleasing today and just break it down a little, but in such a loving way, because it can be kind of a heavy topic. It can bring up a lot for people, especially if you find that you identify as a people pleaser. I absolutely do, and have more so in the past. I do have more of a conscious understanding of it now. So I catch myself sometimes and still do it sometimes. It's not that these things we notice that no longer serve us necessarily just go away because we're aware of it. It's something that we have to work on every day. So we get better at it. And through a few tips that I'm going to share with you at the end. Oh, yeah. Awesome, Allison. Lots going on then. All right. So I thought we would take a moment, as we do every time I at least remember at the beginning of a training. We're going to just take a moment. We're going to take 4 deep breaths. We're just going to wind down a little bit from the day. If you've had a busy day, you can kind of come back to center, feel a little bit grounded, settle in. It is 8 p.m. our time, so kind of settling in for bed whenever your bedtime is. If just a reminder to exhale longer than your inhale, that stimulates that parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest state. And if you want some extra nourishment, breathe into your belly first and then up into your chest. And that just kind of gives a bit of a massage, and it's just like a full breath there. So super nourishing. If you need a little bit of extra support, if you've been feeling a little bit stressed out, you can put 1 hand or 2 hands over your heart, just kind of connects. It's a, I don't know the right word to use, but you're connecting back to your body, that like physical touch, and you're feeling your heartbeat, you're feeling your lungs expand. So there's a mindfulness there that also helps with bringing your stress levels down and feeling safe in your body. So we'll just take a moment to do that. If you feel like closing your eyes, feel free to do that. Keep your eyes open, whatever feels right. Just kind of go with what your body tells you. If you need a little extra support, you can kind of blow out your mouth. There's just a little more power in that, I would say. Wonderful. I hope everyone's feeling a little bit more relaxed after that. So as we usually do, we kind of start out, I like to start out with a bit of a definition, but I also like participation so that we can kind of feed off of each other. Now, again, if you're watching the replay, just pop your comments in. Let's start people pleasing. What do you think about when you hear the word people pleasing? If it's a new term, that's okay. You can say like, this is new for me. I've heard of it, not sure what it is. Or if you are a little bit more familiar with it, like what comes to mind when you think about people pleasing? I'll just give it a moment and then we'll kind of dive in. And while we're kind of digesting that and putting it in the comments, I want to approach this topic with so much just love and support, because it can be a little heavy. It can bring up a lot of stuff. And when I think about people pleasing, I think about just how much I've done it from such an early age. And I think about that little Lauren and how much I wanted to fit in, and all of the things that I thought I had to do so that people would like me when I was little. And then growing up, right, it becomes a just a pattern, just a way of how you kind of approach things. So if this brings up kind of memories of your childhood, just know that I'm sending you so much love. I'm sending you support. And in those moments, if you can take a moment to kind of visualize that younger version of you that was really hurting from these things, just imagine yourself as an adult now, just wrapping your arms around them and giving them a big hug and just kind of supporting your inner child, which was part of the last month's training. So it's been really interesting how the topics have kind of organically, just based on how you voted in the poll, that's how I choose the topics. The most votes gets the next topic kind of thing. And it's been really interesting, the progression of the topics and how they've really built on each other. So I think that's been like super cool. So Allison says, doing things to make people around you happy, often without replenishing your own needs. Absolutely. Yes. So people pleasing, it can be called the disease to please. And another thing is called is sociotropy. That was a new term for me. I'd never heard of that, but I guess that's more of a formal term for it. So according to the American Psychological Association, people pleasing is defined as the tendency to place an inordinate value on relationships over personal independence in response to the loss of relationships or conflict. When we think about people pleasing on one side of the spectrum, the other side of the spectrum, if you want to do a comparison, would be autonomy. So autonomy focuses on independence, whereas people pleasing prioritizes interpersonal relationships above everything else. So we're basically sacrificing ourselves and our needs and our self-worth to please others and to try to get a result that's outside of ourselves. I've talked a lot about self-worth and how we can get caught up in patterns and behaviors based on our social conditioning and how we were raised those first few years when we were just a subconscious sponge, and how we end up with those layers built up. We end up looking for external validation to validate how we feel inside about ourselves, and how that can be detrimental to our life and living authentically. And another thing, when I think about people pleasing, I think about just how it kind of it chips away our, like, the essence of who we are, by the way that we like, we're giving away pieces of ourselves, we're hiding pieces of ourselves, and so it's easy to lose ourselves in people pleasing. So why do we people please? I mean, there's a number of reasons. They're tied into different things. They can be, I would say probably for everyone, it would be a mix of things, right? Depending on our circumstance and how we were raised and all of that. And another thing I want to kind of say as a precursor is, and I try and say it in every training, especially when we're going into these topics that can be a little bit sensitive or bring up memories and stuff, is there's nothing broken about you. You are wonderful as you are. When we look at these topics, it's not to fix you, because you're not broken. These are things that we can look at and decide if it's serving us. There's always benefits to the way that we behave, like to our behaviors, whether it's really like in a soul way to our benefit or not, or again, seeking that external validation. But essentially, I just want to bring some of these topics to light so that if you feel like there's things that you want to change, there's patterns you want to break, there's onion layers you want to peel back from from our conditioning as a society. These are some of the ways we can do them. These are the topics that we can talk about to understand why we do the things that we do and how we can shift those things so that we're coming back into our own authenticity, and we're coming back, we're meeting ourselves again, or maybe for the first time, if we feel like we've been doing this all our lives, we're learning really who we are at a core without all of these extra layers that we kind of have on ourselves that protect us from whatever we're fearing. People pleasing at the root has a lot to do with fear. I was just thinking about that. I did a little bit of a quiet couple of minutes meditation just to kind of do some breathing and just center so that I feel, I guess, composed and not all over the place like I sometimes do. It's interesting. Some of the times when I'm teaching, I just feel like my brain's like pinging all over the place, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that people aren't that I'm not coming across the way that my brain feels right now. And I've watched my videos back, and it's like, okay, I'm still coming across clearly, I think, even though in my brain there's like a million things going on, but I'm going to keep moving forward. So some of the things that can kind of be a root cause of people pleasing, one being childhood trauma. And people pleasing can be a response to feeling safe and secure in our body, in our surroundings. One note that I put in here is like, don't rock the boat. So if we are in a household, or we have a relationship with someone of authority, a parent or a guardian or a family member, teacher, whatever that may look like, and we don't feel safe and secure around for whatever reason, we can people please so that we kind of like, we keep it neutral, right? Even keel. We don't want to rock the boat. So we can do these extra things so that we feel like the situation is safe. And let me know if there's maybe a person or people that you feel like you kind of have to go that extra mile with, just to like keep things cool when you're around them, because otherwise you're not sure. Maybe it feels like you're okay. One good example would be if there's someone who maybe is emotionally charged or up and down in their emotions, and you're not sure which version you're going to get of them that day, and maybe a lot of the time it feels like you're walking on eggshells. This can be a childhood or now. We do these extra things to like make sure that it's like to try and control the situation so that they don't go off on us, because we don't want to say the wrong thing and then them yell at us, right? If we're a kid or whatever, because I think we'd be more influenced if we're a child and a little bit more sensitive to that. So we do these extra things so that we feel like we can control their reaction and make sure things stay calm and collected. Family dynamic, I mentioned family members and stuff. Things that we watch and learn behavior, like we talked about in June. We're absorbing our environment around us before that prefrontal cortex gets further developed, and we can start to kind of reason and problem solve on our own. So we can learn some of these things. We can pick up these habits by the people that we're around the most, and we see how they interact. Maybe one parent's a people pleaser to the other, and we can learn from that parent in order to influence the one who might be more reactive, if that's the case. These are just kind of little examples. Of course, there's a million of them, but I'm just saying what's kind of coming to mind in the moment. Poor self-esteem. So again, looking for that external validation when we can try and influence our external surroundings and the people that we're interacting with so that we feel like we fit in. And I almost said belong, but belong, they're different things. And I've talked about it before, but I'll keep saying it until it's fully integrated and makes sense, especially if you haven't seen some of the other trainings. But fitting in and belonging are two different things. Fitting in is changing ourselves so that people will accept us, and so we're not showing up as who we are, and belonging is showing up as who we are in our full authenticity, and people accept us for who we are. That's what belonging is. That's kind of, for me, it's the end goal. So if we don't feel like we belong, but we want to fit in, we can people please and kind of like be that super nice person and say yes to all the things and take on all the tasks. Or if you think about in high school, like school, it doesn't have to be high school, but school, when you're in a group project, and maybe it's these people that aren't necessarily the kindest to you, but you've been grouped up with them, and you take on extra roles in the group project. Or maybe they kind of, they're the cool kids, and you pretty much do the whole project. So because you're trying to like fit in, and for me, those types of things never worked, because again, they didn't like me to begin with. So me going those extra miles didn't work. But I didn't know better, right? So I was just, you do what you can to kind of succeed in the get that validation that you need at the time. Another one is perfectionism, feeling the need to control how others think and feel. And that again can stem back from that safety thing. The perfectionism, I don't what's the word? I don't resonate with as much, but it certainly is one of the things. Now let's talk about what people pleasing can look like. We've kind of talked about what it is and why we do it. Now let's chat about what it looks like. One of the biggest things I can think of to say is we struggle to say no even when we want to. We take on things that we don't want to do, but we do it anyway, either for the acceptance or to feel safe, whatever that might look like. Another thing is being concerned about how people perceive you. That's an external validation. That's reaching outside of ourselves. If we care about what people think about us, how they perceive us, how they perceive us, or I can't think of the word. I'll leave it. It's floating out there somewhere. But then there's something inward we need to look at. If looking at how people perceive us and what they think about us really has that much power over us, then we need to take back that power. Abandoning ourselves during the approval of others, like we've talked about, fitting in, and low self-esteem and poor self-image. So of course, if we have poor self-image, poor self-esteem, poor self-worth, we can't find it within ourselves to show up as we are. So we're going to find those external things. And then to kind of expand on that, reaching for external validation instead of internal self-worth. Another thing is apologizing when it's not necessary. Maybe you're saying something that feels truthful for you and it's not received well, and then you end up apologizing about it, even though it was something that you needed to say to speak your truth. And doing this often, or feeling like we're not heard, that's a whole kind of thing in itself, right? And there's a difference between speaking your truth and it not being received for whatever reason, but there's another, if you speak your truth, but it depends on kind of the intention, like where you're coming from. You're saying it genuinely and you just have to say your truth, and you say it in a neutral or loving way, and it's not received well, that's on that person, right? We all have to kind of own not only what we're saying, but how we react to what people say. But if you're saying it from like an angry or frustrated delivery, we have to be conscious of our delivery, and that would be a time when I would apologize, of course, right? We're taking blame when it's not your fault. Again, try not to rock the boat. And these things, like it just, like, I feel like it just chips away at pieces of us. And we just get whittled away by doing these things, not speaking our truth, taking the blame when it's not our fault, and not apologizing for things that we should be able to say. The other thing is helping people at the expense of our own wellness and needs. Let's see here. So putting people ahead of our own soul cup and our own self-care, and I call it hygiene, right? I think it's more essential than the buzzword of self-care. I really think that we need to focus on mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. I feel like there's another one. Mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. I think there's I think there's 5 or 6, but anyway, they're not coming to my mind at the moment. But these things, they should be part of our daily life. They should be part of our lifestyle, making sure that we're maintaining them and not running dry. So when we're overextending ourselves for other people, and we especially feel it when we know the person doesn't, we know we're people pleasing when the person doesn't, we know that they don't appreciate it, right? It's one thing to want to help out and know that we're making a difference and the people really appreciate our effort. It's people pleasing when we're doing it and the people expect it from us and they don't appreciate it. That's like broad daylight to me. I've done it a million times. That's why I know. It can also look like a tendency to overachieve. Again, kind of trying to make up for whatever we're not giving ourselves or feeling internally. The need to take control, anxiety, fear of conflict, anxiety and fear of conflict. That's what are we avoiding? What are we people pleasing to avoid in the situation? That's a question we can ask ourselves. That's where that anxiety and conflict stuff comes from. So with everything that we do, there's always benefits, even if it's what I would say still kind of to our detriment, because then we're not living authentically and then there's consequences to it. But like I was saying before, to kind of start out, one of the benefits is feeling safe and secure, not rocking the boat. So we feel safe, even though we need to learn how to set those boundaries and stuff. There's kind of 2 parts here that I wrote notes about a little bit. The benefits of the people pleaser is generally people pleasers are, we have a lot of good qualities. We're focusing them in the wrong direction sometimes, and with the wrong intention, if that makes sense. Let me know if that makes sense. So people pleasers are often very thoughtful, caring, empathetic, relatable. We are the people that people want to come to and talk to. We like to feel helpful to others. And this doesn't have to be because we're looking for something to validate internally. We genuinely want to help other people and feel of service. We are often the rescuer, can be good and bad, of course. And people see us as reliable. People pleasers are often also warm, understanding, and they want to create secure relationships. So yeah, it all goes hand in hand. I feel like I'm repeating myself sometimes, but hopefully I'm doing it really to drive in certain points. I think the more times we hear things, especially if I say it a little bit differently every time, sometimes we need a couple different ways before it kind of clicks and we get our own aha moment. So I wrote here, the struggle lies in the intention of how the kindness is directed, whether it's for an external result or it's from an internal desire. Do we see someone in need who's really like in a bad way? We see someone struggling, they haven't asked us for our help, and we really like the love and the empathy and the compassion, we feel it inside of ourselves and we want to pour it outside to help this person, give them a hand up, or just a kindness in the moment? Or is there something that we're lacking inside, so we're doing things outside of ourselves to try and bring it in? It's like, is it starting in and pouring out, or are we missing it from in and we're trying to put it in from out? Does that make sense? Now, what are the consequences? There's always consequences of people pleasing, especially when it's long term. I'm just going to take a drink of water for a moment. Let me know if there's any questions so far, or if anything's kind of hitting for you. Again, I'm sending so much love if this is a little bit tender for you. So the first thing I have written here, one of the consequences is how detrimental it is to our self-worth and self-esteem. Because if we spend our lives relying on the validation of others to make us feel like we're worthy, we're whole, we're complete, we're good enough, that's a slippery slope to walk. That tightrope is very narrow. If we're looking at what's outside of us in order to feel like we're worthy, we will have, by doing that, we will have a never-ending pursuit of approval, because we simply cannot get the validation from other people in the way that we can find it within ourselves and then pour it out of ourselves once we have it. We'll never have the same feeling of worthiness based on how someone else feels about us as we can if we can find it within ourselves. If we're people pleasing, we'll always have the desire for acceptance instead of just simply accepting ourselves. And then, of course, this brings us into a lifelong, or however long it takes us to be aware of the pattern and decide that we want to shift it. We'll be in a loop of feeling unworthy, powerless, or resentful to some degree, right? Yeah, I guess it just depends on how deep we're in with it. But we don't get out of it until we break the pattern. There's just a constant loop, and we'll always feel that way because we're always looking outside of ourselves. Some things we can feel as a result of people pleasing: stress, anxiety and depression, anger and frustration, depleted willpower and confidence. So when you think about, I'm gonna do an integration exercise near the end of this, so I'm gonna keep going because I don't want to go over too long. But I think this part will make a little bit more sense when we do a little exercise with each other. Lack of authenticity, that's another consequence, right? Because we're not showing up as ourselves. We're doing the things we think other people expect of us, or the things that we think we need to do for approval or a safe surrounding. We're not living, we're not being us. So we're losing our authenticity. We're losing who we are. We'll have relationship difficulties, and there can be disordered eating as well. It can go into some needing that control, or just being very, this goes back to the nervous system topic that I've talked about. And when we're very dysregulated in our nervous system, we can do all kinds of behaviors to try when we're like out of control with that, and disordered eating could be one of them. So we're going to get into 8 tips to start breaking the people pleasing habit. So 8 things that you can start doing. And some of these I'll talk about very briefly because we're going to go into it in next month's masterclass, like workshop. It's going to be about boundaries. So this is kind of a natural progression into next month's topic, which is super cool. The first thing that you can try, and believe me, I don't say this lightly, but it is essential, first couple especially. Practice saying no. It will change your life. It will change your life in the biggest ways if you can learn how to say no. If saying no feels uncomfortable to you so far, you know that you're people pleasing. And it was really hard for me, really hard. I would overextend myself to the craziest degree. The things that I would take on because I couldn't say no. The things I would agree to or volunteer for to feel accepted. Unreal. So like I've been there. If this is resonating with you, I feel you so much. Number 2, set effective boundaries. When we can set boundaries and be very clear about our intentions, what we're okay with, what we're not okay with, this is just something, it's so essential in society, especially if you're thinking about children. And essentially it goes back to that, the lack of their prefrontal cortex development. They don't have all the problem solving, the reasoning and stuff. So they need their people that are raising them to have boundaries, right? And again, there's no shame around any of this. We do the best that we can with what we have, and based on how we were raised and stuff like this. But when we can just have the awareness, we can start to influence the people around us, and especially if we've got kiddos around us. We know that kids really thrive with boundaries. They like to know, even when they push them, and then again, that's part of their development. They're getting curious about things, and they're starting to see kind of like where their limits are and stuff. This is why boundaries are so important for them, and especially little, like super little, like routine and boundaries and stuff. And then they just kind of, they know where they stand in the world, and there's a security to that in a way, even when they start to push them. And then outside of that, just setting boundaries with your conversations. If there's something that you're not comfortable with that somebody's talking about, you can set a boundary there and just say, you know what, can we change the subject? I'm really not comfortable talking about this. Or if there's someone you're going to see that you know likes to chat a lot, and you know that you have something to go to, you can kind of set a boundary at the beginning and say, hey, I know we're going to meet up for coffee, whatever. I just want to let you know I got to leave by 4 or whatever, right? You're kind of setting that boundary that way. When you go to get up at 4, when you have to leave, it's like they're aware of that. They know the parameters that have been set for that interaction. And again, there's a million ways you can set boundaries. Those are just a couple. Number 3 also is important, prioritizing your own well-being. You cannot serve and help others, especially being empathetic and caring and kind. We cannot help others if we are burnt out and depleted. So we really have to prioritize our well-being in all of those ways. Use it as hygiene. Like I say, we shower every day for our physical hygiene. What are you doing for your mental hygiene? What are you doing for your emotional hygiene? Or what can you do, right? I feel like saying, what are you doing? I don't want that to come off as like, if you're not doing it, you're bad. This is just an awareness of like, what can we do? What are we currently doing? If we're struggling in that area, how can we add a little bit more support to those areas in our daily life? Simple. I'm saying it with love and hugs. Practice communicating with power. This is beneficial for both ourselves and the people that we're communicating with. So in terms of ourselves and how practicing communicating with power benefits us is it will increase our self-confidence, because if we can kind of like show up, we've got our boundaries, we're saying no, we're setting a standard and communicating, it's like we're gonna walk a little taller, right? We're gonna have a more powerful stance, we're gonna have more confidence, and that in itself helps to combat the people pleasing tendencies. You start to kind of drive it out. And then in terms of how it influences and affects the people around us, it shows them that we have leadership skills and we can kind of come into our own a little bit that way, right? I'm just looking at my notes quick. It shows an executive presence. So especially if we're in a leadership role with work or whatever that might look like, it helps to just kind of to show the role that we are in, and it helps to build our confidence. Number 5 is challenge your negative self-talk. So when you start to get these stories coming up, and it's part of being a human, when you have these beliefs, self-talk, thoughts that start to kind of sabotage your boundaries or your attempt to have boundaries and your attempt to say no and stuff, we need to be aware of those things, because those are the things that we need to look at, right? And strengthen our opposition to them, I guess you could say. These are also and anything that would affect our need to prioritize our own needs. When we start having that negative self-talk about our own importance and where we stand compared to others and putting them before us, those are the little flags that when we start doing that, or we catch ourselves doing that, we just need to have that mindfulness awareness. And I said it from the beginning when we did the mindfulness masterclass, this isn't to shame or judge or look at ourselves as if we were wrong or bad in any way. The whole what's the word I want to use? You can tell I have a little bit of brain fog, eh? The whole intention of it is to be neutral and to just observe it as it is. Be that third party. Pretend you're like your own best friend. What would your best friend say about it? And if they could just see what's happening in your life and observe it and get curious about it, and then decide like, these are the things I would like to shift because it'll serve me more. It'll allow me to speak my voice or use my voice, speak my truth, and show up authentically. We can do that for ourselves. But if you need a little bit of a reminder, then just think of it like, what would my best friend, how could they look at it and try to do it that way, and just remain neutral. Just get curious. That's all it is. We're getting curious. And this is how we start to do the shifting and the self work. Surround yourself with supportive people. We are some of the people we spend the most time with, right? So when we intentionally surround ourselves with people who are on the same path as us, are doing the same type of work to heal the things, and they understand it, right? We want to be surrounded by people we feel we belong with, that accept us for who we are, and people who will support us where we are in our journey. And when we can do that, it makes the work and the journey so much easier, because they're on par with us, right? They're doing the same things. They have the same struggles. We can kind of work them out together. We can support each other. And we want to make sure that the people that we surround ourselves have our best interests in mind. We don't have to people please with them. We can just show up. And the people are the right people when you're just like oozing with so much love, so much compassion. Like when you want to help them, it's just like it's from within, and it's just like it's pouring out, and you just want to be there for them. And you feel that same authentic love and compassion from them too when you are struggling or there's something going on. You just need a little bit of extra support, and it's just oozing out of them and coming your way with big hugs and such. Number 7 is identify and address any underlying anxiety or fear. These are the things that would be driving our people-pleasing tendencies and behaviors. So when we can start to get curious, I'll say it a million times, when we keep that curious beginner's mind, right? That childlike curiosity of how things work and why they work, and just wanting to expand our knowledge and understanding about things without judging it. This is when we can start to pick up on the root causes. And we don't always have to know exactly why we do things. The biggest thing is just having the awareness around it, so then we can kind of just pick up on it a little bit quicker. And these things don't happen overnight. It's like you might notice it every once in a while, but then you start to notice it more often, and then you can catch yourself either in the act or about to people please, and you can decide if you want to do it or not. You have the awareness and you have the autonomy to decide if you want to do it, or if you want to put your tools, your boundaries, your no, using the word no in place. That's the beauty of the awareness. We can start to decide in the moment, or catch it beforehand. When we start to move into that behavior, we can pull ourselves back out and put our tools into place, so that we're serving ourselves in a healthier way and honoring our authenticity. And the last thing is practice self-compassion, which I've really already talked about. This is having the understanding that you're not broken. There's nothing to fix here. We're peeling back those layers, and we're finding ways to navigate life and live from a fuller place of fuller authenticity, because people are drawn to that. When we show up in a way that we think people want us to, there's such a different energy behind it than just like coming into the room and being ourselves. And people, people get magnetic to that, because we can tell when people are authentic or not, right? We feel it. And when we know someone that's like, oh, they're hiding something, or they're just not, there's something about them, we know when it's not authentic, compared to when someone just like shows up and maybe they're like boisterous, maybe they're loud, and maybe it like triggers something inside of us that we're not owning ourselves, but at least we can give them the full credit of like, they are being themselves. That they're just showing up authentically, and it's like, well, I will give them the credit that they are fully in their authenticity. And I think that's something to admire in this day and society, with the way things are kind of set up to create the contrary. So a couple last notes that I found helpful through my own people-pleasing journey is, and this is a more recent one, I would say within the last couple years I've started doing this, is switching out apologies. So say you're late for something, or you're a little bit delayed, instead of like saying, sorry, I'm late, I'm blah, 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 switch it out for, thank you for your patience, thank you for waiting for me, right? So there's just, again, there's just a different intention and energy behind it, and I found it really helpful. And I still will apologize, um I think, where it needs to be, and sometimes I catch myself a little bit, but there's a lot of instances where we could really just switch it out with like a thanks for holding the seat for me, or whatever, I'm kind of blanking a little bit on extra examples, but I hope that kind of gives you an idea. And I think I already talked about this. Get curious about how people pleasing makes. Oh, no, I didn't. So this is going to move into our integration. Sorry, I read it wrong the first time. Get curious about how people pleasing makes you feel to help identify the root of the desire to people please. So the example, I put something in brackets to tell you about one of my roots of people pleasing. And when I talked about some of the ways that it can look like, what was the word that I used? But basically, being the rescuer or the hero, like swooping in and being the rescue. I was that person for a lot of years. I still like to be helpful, but I take pause before I dive in headfirst to something, and I think, is this for me or is this for them? Is this to help them, or is this so that I feel like I am the one to come in and save them? Because I mean, I really don't think people need saving. We can support them and hold space for them so that they can find their way. But I really was that person, especially for this one particular friend. I was always like the savior, running to their beck and call every time things like fell apart. And as much as I wanted to help them, I still am a supportive friend, but I have boundaries now. And I don't, like, there was definitely a vibe of like, I lit up because it's like, I get to rush in to save the day. And that's just it, it's truly yeah, that was like, it was such a theme growing up. I wanted to be the savior because then I felt important. I felt, yeah, I felt like I was making a difference. And truthfully, not everyone who I was, in quotes, saving appreciated it. They came to expect it. They did not appreciate it though. And that's where that kind of wore away parts of me. So let's talk about, let's do we'll take a quick, are there any questions before we go into the integration practice? How are you doing over there, Allison? You still with us? So there you go. Okay, perfect. All right. So we're gonna do a bit of a, I guess, mindfulness, and I think we could also call it like a somatic practice, because somatic is like in the body. So we're getting to know our body a little bit. And this is a bit of, it can be a bit of an extension from the intuition workshop that we did, and in starting to learn how to listen to that inner voice, what the inner voice is and stuff. This is one of those practices that you can do, that you can start to, yeah, get to know that inner voice, that nudge and the feelings inside of our body, because when you can identify them more distinctly, you'll pick it out in daily life, and you'll be able to, I don't want to say react, but respond accordingly. So we're gonna talk about and practice what a yes feels like in our body and what a no feels like in our body. So let's just take a moment. I have a really sore back, so if I'm moving kind of weird or just not fully, it's because I pulled a muscle in my shoulder, and it's been not the greatest thing. I had to take a muscle relaxant to kind of take off the edge. we're just gonna take a couple deep breaths again to kind of settle in. If hopefully you're feeling kind of relaxed, but take a couple breaths and just like blow it out. We're gonna blow out the day or whatever's going on in life. So nice big deep breath in. Hold at the top for a moment. And then just fully let it go. Just let it melt out of you. Do one more. And let it go. Okay. So we're going to connect in with our body. And this might sound like a weird concept, but if you're open to it and try it, it's really essential. And this is one of those foundational tools that you can use in so many different areas of your life that are so, so helpful. So we're going to start. We're going to think. You can close your eyes or you can keep them open if you want. And how do I want to say this? We're going to think about, say, your best friend or just someone that's not you. Think of their name. And then you're going to say, so say I'm thinking of, what am I thinking of? Say I'm thinking of my mom, Sandy. We're going to say to ourselves, and I would say just to kind of have like more of a heightened experience in our body, maybe let's close our eyes for a moment. You're going to say, my name is, and then you're going to say that name. My name is Sandy. How does that feel in your body? So use that person's name. How does that feel when you say it? Maybe say it a couple times. See how you kind of react. Maybe your face changes a little bit and just like, how does your body feel when you say that? And then try it again, but say your own name. My name is Lauren. My name is Lauren. How does that feel? Do you feel a difference? Think of something that you did today. And then either say it out loud, say it in your head. Guy, I went to work today. Something that you pretend you're saying it to a friend. I went to work today. How does that land in your body? Whatever you did today, does it land the same way as when you say your name? Are you noticing a pattern and just like kind of how it feels in your body? And then say another lie out loud. Maybe it's something you want to do, but you haven't done yet, but just say you did it and just see how that lands. I went for a walk by the water today. I didn't. I wish I did. Can you describe the difference in how your body feels when you are saying something that's of truth and something that is not of truth? Give it a minute. Now we can use this exercise as just like a simple way to kind of start tuning into our body a little bit. What I can tell you about my experience, and again, I would love to hear your experience in the comments. From my experience, when I say something that's truthful or feels good to me, think of something you're really excited to go do. Maybe you're going to go see a family member, or there's something you're going to try for the first time. And when you talk about it, there's kind of an expansion. Like it's like my chest and shoulders kind of broaden, and you just get excited. You're like, you open up. Does that make sense? When you get lit up about something, truth feels right, deeper, false feels shallow and has no depth. Yeah, so in terms of how that hits with your body, would you say this, like there's an expansion of like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do this? There's a like I think I'm probably over emphasizing it, but I guess I'm just kind of, I'm showing you in a big way how my body feels in general. Like it feels, there's an expansion there. And then when I say something that's not truthful, there's a contraction, right? It's like, ugh. Tell me if that hits as well. You just like, you feel a little bit smaller. Your shoulders kind of cave in. Your chest kind of, it also caves in. You're contracting. So when we can translate that simple exercise of saying something truthful, saying a lie, and how our body responds to it immediately, there's so many signals that our body gives us like all day long. We're just not conscious of them. We're not looking for them or really receiving it. We're busy thinking about all the things, right? So it is it's a mindful practice. But when we can start to really get conscious about it, we can extend this. So the way that what I want to bring to your attention now is, think of a few things that, and you can do this kind of on your own time. I'm going to wrap up here, but think of some things that you want to do, you have an opportunity to do, that you want to do, you're lit up, you're excited about. And again, be very conscious about that physical sensation, that physical reaction that you feel, whether it's like really wide or not. And then think about things that maybe have happened recently or in the past. If you like, bring up some situations in the past where you have said yes to something that you wanted to say no to. And imagine whoever asked you, like replay it in your head, that situation that you said yes to, but you wanted to say no to. And imagine them asking it to you again, like in the present moment, and feel how that feels. For me, in my experience, it feels similar to when I said a lie out loud. It feels like a contraction. When someone asks me to do something and I don't want to do it, I'll feel that like, really don't want to do that. But sometimes I've said yes, but I still have that physical reaction. Hey, Margot, we're just finishing up, but you can definitely catch the replay. I think it's a goodie. So the way that this ties into everything is just having the awareness and start maybe doing this conscious practice a couple times a week or whatever you think, so that you get to know your body and those signals that it gives you. Because then when someone asks you to do something, you know very quickly, you'll know whether it's a yes, it's expansive, or whether it's a no, it's a contraction. And when it's a no, but you feel like you should say, again, people pleasing is also a lot about shoulds, saying yes to things you think you should do. Forget about the shoulds. Don't should all over yourself. I love that one. I have to use it every time I get an opportunity. But this is when we have that awareness and it's like a no, you feel it, it's a no. Take that pause. Is there a boundary that you could set? Can you say no? And this is the beginning of that new pattern, that new ball that we get rolling. Does that make sense? Are there any questions before we kind of finish up here? I do want to respect your time. So while we wait, if there's any questions or comments, I'd love to know what you thought of this. Next month will be a masterclass called Speak Up. It will be on setting boundaries. It's going to be on Thursday, August 3rd at 8 p.m. again inside this group. I will create an event for that and send out all of the invites so you can RSVP. I continue to have weekly podcast episodes on the Living on Lemonade with Lauren podcast. I am getting into a bit of expansion, I guess, with my capacity with life. The last year has been very, very difficult for me. And obviously not going to go into it right now, but I feel like I'm just starting to kind of step into the light again and have more capacity to do things. I have lots of ideas, but it's just getting to a place where it's like, okay, I feel like I'm taking care of myself. I'm meeting my needs. And now again, I can extend it from inside. So I have scheduled a couple posts inside this group per week. There's one on Monday, there's one on Wednesday. Just to kind of start to create conversations and community within the community, right? I don't want to like overload it, but I would love for people to start interacting. I want to find ways to get people kind of talking about things and we can relate to each other. Like this is where the healing happens, when we are surrounded by people who understand us and we have community and like-minded people. So I am starting to build that up. I'm just not putting the pressure. I don't want it to be a should. I don't want to resent it, because that's another thing with people pleasing. We end up resenting things, right? We get frustrated, resentful, angry. So not saying that like this group is people pleasing at all. I'm just saying that I don't want to serve you and show up from an energy of should. I want to serve you from an energy of I'm so excited to share this. It has to come out of me in these ways. And I'm just now navigating what that looks like. If there are topics that you want to have me talk about, or you're interested to know more about, or you just have any suggestions on how you would like to develop and grow this group, I'm always open to options. Like it's a brand new baby, right? There's so many ways we can mold it. So I'm always open to like how I can serve you better, while also like bringing the ideas that I have myself into the group. So there's the masterclass next month, the weekly podcast episodes. I share those in my stories. I'll have to start again sharing them in the group. I'm just starting to get my groove. So thank you for your patience. I'm not going to apologize, because there's nothing to apologize for. We go through hard times, and we can be thankful that people are along the journey and being patient with us and supportive. So I'm very thankful for this community. I've talked about this Create Your Calm Self-Study course. I am probably 75% finished. The last couple of weeks were such a whirlwind with getting ready for my grandma's 100th birthday party that I didn't get as much done in the course, but it's in the kind of finishing touches. So I will be announcing that very soon. It'll be ready to purchase. It's going to be a self-study course on some of these foundational things that kind of go into a bit of a deeper dive that we've already talked about in the free content, but also have some worksheets and some audio meditations and stuff like that. So it's kind of packaged together nicely, and it's a really great introduction to if you want to start getting curious about learning some of these topics and learning the tools to help support you in life. And then of course, I think probably the last couple of master classes I've talked about the oracle card reading. So if you're interested in having an oracle card reading, I use my intuition to kind of give wisdom and inspiration. We can chat about that. But anywho, I'm gonna let you go because I don't want to cut into more of your time. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're catching the replay, uh, thank you. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. I love being in here. These are topics that have changed my life, and it just feels so incredible to now have the capacity and the space and the opportunity to share about them so that more people can navigate life with more grace and ease. So have a wonderful evening. You're very welcome, Allison. I'm so glad you found it interesting and helpful. And I'm excited for next month, and you'll start to see a little bit more of me inside of the group. There are a couple other things that I want to try outside of the monthly masterclasses. I'm just getting organized. So stay tuned. There's more wonderful stuff coming up. And again, if you ever have any ideas, just send me a message or pop them in the group. All right, take care, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.